Hi guys, welcome to Crazy Burger. So in this video I'm going to be looking at loaded programs on your USB stick and mainly playing through some games, highlighting a few things, looking at multi-load games, multi-cassette games, obviously how to program keys onto your gamepad if you're using that as a controller device, and a few other things beside. Anyway, let's get stuck into the video and I'll talk you through all my experiences so far. Okay guys, so let's get started. So if you've got your USB stick loaded with loads of games, it might look a little bit like this. If it doesn't, I would recommend setting up your folder in some kind of structure. It doesn't need to be like this. Obviously you need to flash it using the link on the Retro Games website and format it to FAT32. And you don't particularly need a big USB stick. Anything about 4 gig is probably ample to put all the games you want. I wouldn't recommend loading it with thousands upon thousands of ROMs. Just pick the ones that you want to sort of add on to it. If you add thousands of ROMs, you're going to be limited to space. And when I say that, I mean you can only see, I think, up to 256 lines per folder. So you're going to have to structure your folders in a way that you can see all the games. So if you just dumped 5,000 ROMs, say, onto this, you would only see up to 256 lines of that. So you need to structure your folder in some way that you'll be able to see all your games. Maybe create a favourites folder or something like that. But I've basically just created an A to Z and dropped all the ROMs in that way. But I've only picked and choose a few of them. There's only so many games I can play at the one time. So doesn't really make a lot of sense to just dump thousands of ROMs onto these things. But anyway, if that's what you want to do, fair enough. But you just remember that you're going to be limited to what you can see when you're playing these games. But anyway guys, let's jump into a few games and I'll highlight a few things. Ideally, I think you want to maybe pick games that are TAP or TAP file formats. Those ones are the ones that will play instantaneous. If you're choosing the TZX files or some other sort of formats, they might not load right away. They might have some loading issues as well, but you obviously can quicken that up. If you choose a game, for example, you can just press the home the game settings, if you choose your game, and you can go in. You can obviously choose your different options here. Now sometimes games may not work right away, so you might ideally want to change it to universal, and that will just automatically pick up the correct model for each game, and usually that does sort out a few issues. I have started a few games that it didn't work, then I've changed this and it has worked. Tape loading speed, again, as I said, if it's tap file, it will just load instantaneous. Otherwise you'll have to sit through the standard loading times that you used to experience back in the day. If you don't want to experience that, then you can fix it here by just making that up to maximum. It will probably still take some time to load, but not as long as it did. It will probably maybe cut it down to about 30 seconds to a minute rather than 10 minutes. The enable extended colors thing doesn't really work for loaded games unless you've added your own color palette or the game is specifically made for the extended ULA plus colors. But for the best part, you'll probably have this completely turned off. Now, joystick type, I've just left this as Kemp's and I'm using the gamepad. If you're using the keyboard, this shouldn't be a massive issue. You can just keep it to the default, but you will have to know the controls for every game you play. Doesn't necessarily mean the default controls like OP for left and right and maybe AZ or QA for up and down will be the same for every game. You're going to have to maybe seek out some of those old manuals online, or if you've got a copy of them in your own game, you're going to have to refer to that so you can use the controls. You can map controls, which I'll cover in a little minute. To if obviously you don't want to use the keyboard, or perhaps you want to use a gamepad, I'll show you how to map controls as well. But at the moment, I'll probably leave it at Kempston. Some games you may need to come back and change it to the cursor mode instead, because I started a few games that did not recognise the gamepad at all. If I came back, change it to cursor, went back to the game, it did recognise. So that's probably a tip there. If it doesn't work right away, come back, change this, and then jump back into the game. Now you probably have to go into this every single time you start the game, at least for the first time. If you choose a game, jump into the home settings and set it up as you like, and then once you've done that and got it perfected, you don't need to go back into that again. But what I'm going to do first, I'll just clear that, is play a little game of Death Chase. This one didn't recognise the gamepad right away when I played it, so I had to run back and choose the cursor mode, and it did recognise it. So that's when you actually push forward on the gamepad and try and take out all the other icons that you see on the screen here. This is a fantastic little game. great fun to actually play. Graphically quite simple, but it's all about the gameplay. This one is so much fun. Feels like you're biking through the forest. Maybe it's something like a kind of Star Wars style thing from Return of the Jedi, but still fantastic stuff. Okay, so I'll probably want to touch here upon the save states per game. So once you're finished with the game, press the home button and it'll automatically go back to here. If you want to save state the game, just push down and then obviously choose that. If you want to get back and play that game again, say we've chose something else, trying to get access to that load state is a little bit of a pain. So if you press the A button, choose your game, and then just go back to this part here, and then push down, you will then get access to the save states. This part is very, very clunky. Hopefully they'll change that. This is something that's just probably not quite right. You shouldn't have to come back to this stage here to actually get access to the sort of save states. You should just choose your game, then press down at this point, but it doesn't work like that, unfortunately. So you have to go press B to go back and then push down and you'll get access there, which is, I don't know, that's a little bit messy for me. Something that does annoy me quite a lot is, obviously you want to close this, you press B and go back, but I keep pressing B, hopefully to go back to the folders, but just remember it's Y to go back to your folders here rather than B. I quite often keep pressing the wrong button and press B to go back, but B actually closes this and goes back to the home carousel instead. This game can be picked up on itch.io and it's a fantastic new styled sort of run and gun style game. It's brilliant stuff, really good. Okay, in this instance, the game didn't recognise the up for jumping. So what I'm going to do is actually map the key. It's recognised everything else apart from that. So what I'm going to do is change the sort of key. So as on the keyboard, it's actually N to jump in this game. So what I need to do is maybe map that to one of the buttons. So if you go into the joystick, you can edit and then press L on the gamepad for keyboard. And then go to N, which is the actual jump button, and then I've mapped that to up, as you can see here. So basically you can skip. If you press the Y button, it skips, and you can basically go through the options there. If you need to edit any of these buttons and add something that's missing, then that's probably the way to go. In this instance, a lot of the controls are actually recognised, just not the jump button. I'm not too sure about the grenades or fire power, so we'll find out soon enough when we go back to the game. So if we jump back to the game itself, go back, we'll maybe jump to the save state that I'd created. Let's ignore that and see if it actually works. Now you might find this quite frequently with a lot of games. If you're using a joystick or a gamepad, it may not recognise the sort of control that you've got. And now that I can press up, it jumps. Okay guys, another game I want to show how to actually map all the controls basically is Chucky Egg. This one is generally probably played with a keyboard, but and for me I like to play with a gamepad, so I like to try and set that up. So if you choose the actual game, and then start it as normal. I think if you leave this as Kempston, it probably doesn't matter too much. It may recognise it if you change it to cursor, but I think this game is primarily set up to be used with the keyboard. But I'll show you how to map all the controls in that game so that you can actually play with the gamepad rather than the keyboard. If you do not know what these controls are, you're going to have to find the original manual online or look at your own game instructions itself and look at the controls and then have them in front of you so that you can refer to that when you're mapping the game in real time. So let's do that now. Okay, so choose your game and press the menu button for the game settings. In this instance, we want to go to map controls for joystick 1 and press the red button, A button for edit. It might be different if you're just using a keyboard. and then choose the L1 button on the gamepad to get the keyboard up. So what we need to do now is map the some relevant buttons for Chucky Egg, which is actually 2 to move up, W to move down, 9 to move left, 0 to move right, and Z to jump. So what we need to do here is obviously up, we want that to be button number 2. Down, we want that to be letter W, sound like Sesame Street here. Left, we want that to be number 9. If we move to that. And then right, we want to be allocated to 0. The fire button, I guess we can use that as a jump button. So we'll move down to Z for the jump button. And that's basically it. And then you can basically close that, you're done. And that should hopefully map the controls for Chucky Egg to a gamepad. Now just close that down and start the game as normal, pressing the home button for auto load media. And then we can start playing Chucky Egg as normal. And here we go, I'm playing with the actual gamepad and A button to jump. Now it'd be absolutely crazy not to play a Dizzy game on this, because this is something that reminds me a lot of the Spectrum days, even the C64 days, was playing all these Dizzy games. And probably my favourite one out of the lot of them was definitely Fantasy World Dizzy. I thought that was fantastic. Something I should probably highlight here is you can bring up the actual tape loading mechanism by holding the home and down button on your gamepad. I think it's slightly different on the keyboard, probably home and A I think it is. But I wouldn't mess about with this too much. This is probably something you want to mess about with in maybe multi-load games where you maybe need to go back in time, maybe rewind the sort of cassette back to the start, which I'll try and cover later on in the video. But that's basically home and A to access this part, more so for multi-load games. And gladly it does recognise the gamepad without needing any change, which is great. I absolutely love these games. These are probably some of the first games I ever played on home computers. I was kind of a late into home computers in the sort of early 90s, and before that I was still playing my Atari 2600 for quite a few years till I could afford to get a home computer. But I'd say most of my friends probably had a Spectrum, where I went the other way and went with the sort of C64, but it could have so easily been the Spectrum. Great memories, I'll tell you, great memories. Yep, cannot do this yet till you get the rope. Okay, next game I'm going to look at is Gauntlet. This is one was actually requested by one of our viewers. So this is a multi-load game. So in this instance, I'm going to choose Universal. I don't think this is anything other than a 48K game, but just in case, I'll let the Spectrum decide. And tape loading speed, I want to put that to maximum. I don't really want to sit and wait while it does load, because it is quite a long loading game, and I think you have to turn the sort of tape to the other side as well. But anyway, let's get started and press the home button. So it says stop tape and press tape. Now you could go on to the home and A, and it comes up with that, and just utilise that. So if you press Y, that basically plays the tape. But right now you can see it's actually flashing green and it's actually paused. So the best thing to do now is just let it do its thing and press the space bar, and it should automatically load in the game. I think it eventually does ask you to rewind or turn the tape to the other side. And obviously we can't turn any tape, there's no tape here. So I think just press the space bar again and it should then automatically load on to the next side. Press the space to continue. And now here we are, we need to choose our control method. Use the cursor keys, which are at the top, so that's basically 5, 6, 7 and 8 at the top, to choose which control method you want to have. So in this instance I'm using the Kempston, hopefully this will actually work. And then press the space bar, and then do the same for the other player. Just choose whatever you want to here. I'll probably just choose the keyboard for player 2, but there is no player 2, it's just me. Press play on tape. Now this is probably one of the instances where you have to, I believe, do home and down and then press the Y button. And you can see it then starts playing the tape, and then just have a little patience, it should hopefully find. Don't mess about with this too much, because if you start messing about with it, it probably won't work. Just have to have a little bit of patience with this particular one. So you You can come out of the navigation, press the X to come out of there, press fire, so it's now recognised. You rewind tape to start of side 2, then press space. So don't do anything with the navigation here, just press the space bar to start the tape. I think just press the space bar again. I believe it is working. Yeah, so it's automatically doing, so you don't need to press Y at this particular point. And I think I was going through this numerous times, pressed Y to start the tape, and it was probably crashing the game. So it just let it do its own thing. Press the sort of space bar. If you hear the tape or you can see it's moving, or you can hear obviously the loading noises, then you know it's actually working. You don't need to press the Y button. Just have a little patience. It should hopefully start. Now this is just one example. This might differ depending on what game you're actually playing, and it can be a little bit of a frustrating experience. So I guess once you finally get your game loaded, probably best thing to do is create a save state so that next time you come into this, you can immediately just jump straight to the actual game without having to go through this process, unless you like this process and you want old school and you want to play it like this. Okay, so that should hopefully work. Sometimes, I think the first time I done that, it didn't actually work for some reason, but that's just typical what happens playing these old games. Sometimes it works, sometimes it crashes. It's just part of the experience, I guess. But yeah, eventually it did work, and we are playing Gauntlet. And hopefully this will work for you guys as well, and you can get to play this great game on your Spectrum. And it works with the gamepad too. Okay, as mentioned earlier, sometimes the games don't recognise the setup right away. It doesn't recognise the Kempston controls. This was one of the games, this is a relatively new game, Middleman Reloaded, kind of like a Terminator style game, and it didn't recognise the Kempston controls. So sometimes it's better maybe choosing cursor instead, and that will recognise and hopefully play the game that way. Now, in this instance, it doesn't recognise the gamepad as the Kempston controller for whatever reason, I don't know. Some games are like that, so if that's the case, just maybe jump straight back out and choose the cursor method instead. Go back to the settings and choose cursor, as you can see here, and then sort of play the game again. And hopefully then choose cursor on the screen here, so choose 4 as your control method. Now we can play the game and progress as normal. It does recognise the control setup. Graphically it is really nice. I love the sort of colourful backgrounds there as well. Probably not the best way of playing it though. Gung Ho style? No. Never the best way of playing these games. So another game we're probably going to look at is Outrun. And that game, I think I had a different copy of this and it did not work. It would not go past the sort of loading screen. Even though I was utilising the tape navigation, it would not press play. Why? It was basically just stuck. It was like a broken tape or something. But anyway, let's have a look at Outrun. This is another sort of multi-load style game as well. Okay, so maybe the first thing to do is set your controls. In this instance, I'm probably using the Kempston. Hopefully that recognised. Then press 1 to get started. It does ask you to press play there, but it just automatically recognises in this instance, and you can just wait for the game to start, and here we go. Now once you finish this stage, it does try to load in the next stage, so you just need to have a bit of patience. You may need to use the tape navigation, as I said there, to press play, otherwise it should hopefully kickstart automatically. You may need to have a little bit of trial and error, as I said, to get games to work. Okay, so just let the game do its thing. I think it is automatically playing itself. The last time I done this, I pressed the brake button or space and it kind of stopped and stopped the actual loading. So hopefully this should work this time. Just let the Spectrum do its thing rather than pressing any button. Have a little bit of patience. Okay, so moving on to The Spy Who Loved Me. Didn't have an awful lot of luck with Outrun. It wouldn't load into the second sort of stage. I sort of run out of patience, so I thought I'll move on to double-sided tapes or multiple tapes. In this instance, I've got The Spy Who Loved Me, side A and B. So I've got 2 separate ones here. So the first thing to do is select them. Make sure you've got them on maximum tape loading speed, obviously, and maybe even universal. And it depends what type of file you've got. In this instance, I've got a TZX file. Go on to the other one and do the exact same. Make sure it's set to the tape loading speed of maximum as well, and put that to universal too, I guess. So it picks up the right model. So clear that, and then first thing you want to do is choose the first side, and then add the second side by pressing the R1 button or the R button on the controller, or whichever the button is on your keyboard. And basically you've now got two files. Then press the home auto load media to get started. So it will automatically start to load in the first tape and go through that process, or side A. So once it's finished that, it will probably prompt you for side B, or obviously here it says now turn over tape and rewind. So what to do is now is press the home button on your keyboard and press S, and that will basically choose the second side or the second tape that we've got here. Press the space bar. In this instance, it might differ from sort of game to game that you're playing. You might just have to press the play button once you've switched sort of cassettes or tapes, but because we're switching over sides, I think you need to press the space bar, and then it will ask to play tape. So home and down to get the navigation. You don't have to, it's automatically started playing. Sometimes you might have to play this automatically, but you see it's actually counting up, so it is working. We don't need to press anything. So here it's asking us to stop the tape, just do the navigation and then press Y, come out of that, and it should hopefully start the game. Press the space bar again and we can get the game started. And here we go, we're actually playing The Spy Who Loved Me. If you don't do any of those sort of sequences right, you may just be sitting staring at a loading screen. And as I said, it's very, it's hit and miss sometimes. You probably have to experiment and have a little bit of time and patience to try and figure out the best way of playing whichever game you've chosen. I definitely think it's very different depending on which game you're actually playing. And I've no idea what I'm doing here. I think I've knocked a few people over. Deliberate, not deliberate, who knows. But anyway, hopefully that will help some people to try and play multi-tapes games. We're also going to have a look at playlists as well. It's pretty similar, but you have to create yourself a playlist. You'll have to do this if you've got more than 3 cassettes or files. Obviously, if you've got 4 or more, you're going to have to create yourself a playlist. Okay, in this instance, I'm using Rambo 3 as the example. Now, you can see here, you could easily play this just by choosing tape 1 and 2, but I'm using this as an example. If you had 3 or 4, or sorry, 4 or more, you can create yourself a playlist. So this is the actual M3U file, which is the playlist, and it's basically just telling the Spectrum to play tape 1 and 2. So it's basically a list that is on a text file, and then you just convert that into an M3U file. Hopefully I'll show that on the screen just now. You just have to list what all your sort of tapes are, or cassettes, all in the list in that text file, and then save that as the M3U file, and then you utilise this M3U file to play those games. Now in this instance, I don't need that playlist. It's only meant for sort of games that have maybe 4 or more files, 4 or more cassettes, or whichever that the format is. So if you want to choose that, this is the actual games list file. Just double check your settings. You've got universal maximum tape loading speed, and then you can press the home auto load media to get started. Now you can place those files in any folder. Just make sure you update the text file to pinpoint those obviously the text file to wherever the location is of your sort of tape files or files that you're using. Ideally, I think you probably need to keep obviously all in the same file type, all tapes, all Z80 files, or whatever it is. And much like if you're playing multi sort of cassettes, if you want to switch, or it's prompting you to switch to another cassette, just hold the home and S button on the keyboard, and that will basically switch to the next cassette in line. If it's 3 or 4, just keep holding down till you get the one that it's asking for. And we're starting the game. Now, once you finish this level, it will maybe ask for the second side, for example. If it does, again, just press the home and S button, and then maybe a combination of the space bar, or just let it do its thing. A little bit of experimentation is most probably needed. And interestingly, I've never actually played this game before. Now guys, I'm not going to play through tons and tons of different games. There's far too many to actually go through. This is another sort of new game called Redshift, which is fantastic. It's actually a shoot 'em up. But again, there's lots of new games out there on itch.io and other different sites that cover the Spectrum, and there's also, you can go back and play all those classics. Now guys, if there's a certain game that you want me to look at, please let me know in the comments and I'll have a look at it in future videos. Yeah, if you've never played this, give it a bash, especially if you love your shooters, then I'm pretty sure you're going to absolutely enjoy this. Definitely another new game to look out for is this one, Seraphima. It's a great little run and gun game, and I would highly recommend probably using the cursor method to control this game. It didn't recognise the Kempston controls for this one. I say it does differ from game to game, just to experiment a little bit. But you'll probably find this game on itch.io, I believe. Some of the games are free to download, other games you're going to have to pay a small fee for. Obviously, those games that are free, consider giving a little tip to the sort of makers of the game for their hard work. This one looks fantastic and plays really well too. Excellent stuff. Anyway guys, as I said, please reach out to me and let me know if there's any other games that you want me to play through. It is absolutely impossible to play through every game, old and new. And I'm really just picking and choosing some and hopefully giving you some tips to get started while playing some of these games. Anyway, thanks very much for watching and we'll catch you again in the next one. Bye for now.